Good to have you with us in the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. We put the spotlight again on Afghanistan. We bring to you the tales of horror of people who are there. We tell you stories of those who've managed to escape and how they got out, what they witnessed on ground. We'll also tell you why this is fast becoming a big human rights and women rights issues, and we will speak to some of the activists who will tell you what the ground reality is, how this Taliban regime functions. But first, let's talk about India's evacuation efforts. In all, roughly about 590 people have been evacuated from Kabul by India. 146 of them were actually first moved to Doha, then repatriated from Doha. 392 others airlifted from Kabul in 3 different flights. Then there are also Afghans, Afghan Sikhs and Afghan Hindus who've actually also been brought back. There are also Afghan lawmakers and their families who have been brought out of Afghanistan and given refuge in our country. Some of their first-hand accounts of what they have experienced is really, really heart-wrenching. For example, we spoke to this guy, Tamal Bhattacharya, who told us how he cheated death and he felt blessed that he had managed to escape, that they were actually in complete darkness and they really didn't know what to do when this Taliban takeover happened, and it happened so quickly. There are others who narrated their experiences about the scary situation at the Kabul airport, which as we speak continues to be still very, very bad, especially for those outside the airport, hoping to just get in, hoping at that chance of a life outside the Taliban regime. People have told us how they struggled to get inside the airport. They saw live firing take place because of the chaos. There was just no way to control that chaos. They've described their own experiences and encounters with Taliban. Taliban entering offices, taking away people's computers, people's personal belongings, even their cars, their documents, everything that many of these citizens had built in Afghanistan in the last many years, just taken away just like that by the Taliban fighters. The MPs who returned spoke about the loss and how they fear further suppression. Loss of money, loss of belongings, loss of property, loss of family members who are on the run. Fear, sheer fear of what happens next to them. Horrific stories coming out. Tonight we talk about this new regime and why the world cannot give up. We talk about those evacuated and their real stories on ground. I say good evening to Heather Barr, Associate Director for Women Rights Division at Human Rights Watch. Marcel Nurzai, Afghani activist, joining me this evening. I'm also going to go across to Yogesh Kumar, an Indian who's been evacuated from Afghanistan. He lived in Kabul since 2012 and has now been safely brought back home. And we're going to try and hear his story out as well. But first, let me go across to the ladies who are joining me right now. And Mursal Nurzai, good evening. Thank you for speaking with us. Already, Mursal, we are beginning to hear stories of various diktats being passed, implemented of separate education, separate schools, restrictions. Women have begun to, under pressure, quit jobs, even from the media segment where we saw them on day one get out there, probably for, Taliban making them do that. But it's changing on ground. Now, is that the Taliban now beginning to show its true face? Mursal, I think you're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself. No, can't hear you still. Okay, we're going to try and fix that connection with Mursal Nurzai. Let me go across and say good evening to Heather Barr, also joining us. Heather, extremely important because already reports of women's rights, human rights violation beginning to emerge from Taliban.
That's right. I think that this is a very frightening moment for women in Afghanistan. We saw the Taliban give a press conference on Tuesday where they assured the international community and Afghans that they will respect all human rights, they'll respect women's rights. But even in that press conference, they're using language that they've used for many years, where they say we respect all women's rights within our rules. We respect all women's rights within the framework of Islam. And we know that their interpretation of the framework of Islam is very different from many other people's. And these restrictions that they impose are quite unique, really, and uniquely awful. When they gave that press conference, the next morning there was an incident where a TV presenter at Tolo News, which is the largest TV network in Afghanistan, was told by people who showed up at her work that she could not work and that she had to go home. So I think one of the questions is whether the Taliban leadership are really even in control of their fighters and their members who are on the ground, even in other parts of Kabul, let alone around the country.
Yes, you're absolutely right. In fact, Euronews, editors have now come out and said that many more women have actually quit, several under pressure, not being allowed to come out, others perhaps in fear. And a lot of it, Heather, while maybe because we don't know how Taliban is going to react and what they're going to finally implement, and there is a lot of fear, justifiably so. But there is also instances coming out. There are multiple reports that have emerged of how they're going door to door, noting down the details of women who've been working, who've been in various professions from government to private sector, young women, and really taking down those details or marking their homes.
So we've heard similar reports. And this is clearly an intent to intimidate people. I think that, if they can just frighten women into staying home, then they won't have to actually impose a policy saying that women can't work. I mean, the Taliban is walking a careful line at the moment where they clearly want international acceptance. And they're also in a difficult position because aid money, which makes up about 80% of the government's budget, has been frozen at the moment. And they presumably are keen for that to be unlocked. But I think they also just want to feel accepted and seen as a legitimate government. And so that's why I think we saw the press conference on Tuesday. But they're also, it's clear in many ways that their views on women have not changed that much. If you look back at the areas that they've controlled over recent years, you find that in a lot of those areas, what they've been doing is allowing girls to attend school, but only up until 6th grade, and often with rules imposed like, boys and girls can't be studying together, girls can only be taught by female teachers, etc. So I think one important point to make is that even if the Taliban impose policies that are not quite as draconian as the ones they imposed in 2001, Afghanistan has an obligation under international law to respect gender equality. Afghanistan has signed up for the Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, and so they need to be held to that standard. And if they want the world to believe that they've changed, they need to allow the UN and other bodies to monitor what's happening in the country and see whether they are in fact respecting human rights.
Yeah, because, and the other aspect, you're right, and let me bring in Mursal Nurzai on this, Mursal, is that the Taliban is being extremely vague when they say, well, we're all right and we're going to be very open, we believe in gender rights, equality, as far as it's within the Sharia law. But the interpretation there is actually very vague, and that's where the problem lies, because already now they've turned around and said, well, girls will have, co-ed education is not okay in universities. Female teachers can't even teach male students, or the other way around. So does the world really realize that when they cite the Sharia laws, they're actually keeping it very open-ended and then doing what they wish to do?
I think this war has been molded in a way to make it a very religious war. and it's more of a power war than the religion war. And Taliban are just trying to shield themselves behind religion, and trying to, while doing that, they are targeting women and children of the country. And there are reports that they are going door to door and searching for journalists, reporters, international people who have worked with the international organizations. They're actually looking at people's cell phones if they have changed into a different religion or they are Christian. I think there is a report from the Express UK News that says that they have killed one Hazara lady because she has turned into a Christian. So you can see how it's been played. It's made a religious war, although it's a power war. I do not believe the fact that they have changed. I do not see any proof of improvement. It's all talks and no actions. All the actions that they are taking is they're killing and suppressing and terrorizing people, and they're and creating a fear in Afghanistan. And you can see it, what's happening in the airport right now. Mr. Boris Johnson, he has called upon the G7 countries a meeting for tomorrow, and he's trying to make Mr. Joe Biden to extend the withdrawal of the troops, which has to happen on 31st of August. So he's trying to extend that, whereas the Taliban chief commander are completely showing that if this happens, the troops will face consequences. So do you see the amount of confidence that they already have? Where is that coming from? How much power is behind Taliban? They're suppressing human rights. They're suppressing women's rights. Children's childhood has been destroyed since years and years of violence. I just have a feeling that this is a long path to go, and I have a feeling that civil war might happen, and I'm really afraid if this happens, more people will be killed, and if this happens, more women will be targeted, because a civil war ends only with the blood of innocent people. So I do not understand, and I do not see that they will come to a conclusion. I only see blood, and I do not want to hear, or I do not want to sound hopeless, but the past doesn't give us any proof that Taliban have changed.
Yeah, in fact, we don't even have to go back very far in the past. We don't even have to talk about what happened when they were fully in control before 2001. We can actually look at the kind of attacks, instances that have happened even in the last couple of years, or the last, 11 years ago, or 10 years ago, 5 years ago, Mursal, because at every step, they have shown that they still very strongly believe in these ideas which are not very pro-women at all.
True. And how do you want to help a country, or how do you want a country to develop when there will not be a modern education? When I say modern education, the freedom of speech, the freedom of education, the freedom to speak your mind, the children to go to school regardless how old they are, the woman to explore what occupation they want to go to, whether they want to be a singer, a sports lady. The last couple of years, one of our family members, my uncle, has built a music institute. It's called Afghanistan National Institute of Music, which is Asia's biggest music institute in Afghanistan. And he has taken children from the streets many years ago, and has built a young group of talented, skilled violinist kids who are singing, who are playing music, who are going worldwide and giving concerts this is a way to build a nation. This is one of the ways. Now, people are in sports. Some other people are in some other occupations. How the future looks without having all these ways and without having this freedom.
Cannot even begin to imagine. And I
Yes.
think the citizens in Afghanistan right now are perhaps wondering the same. How is that future going to look for them? Thank you so much, Mursal, for joining us, and Hyderabad. Thank you to both of you. I want to go across to Yogesh Kumar. Yogesh, thank you for speaking to us. Namaskar. And we are glad that you are back safely. You're back in India. When did you return? And for how long, how did you manage to reach the Kabul airport to begin with?
We just returned on 21st of August. But 17th of August, I evacuated from the Kabul to Qatar, US military base.
Your audio is a little unclear, but आप कह रहे हैं कि you returned on 17th of August. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you, take us through the experience? What happened since 15th of August as Taliban took over, and how were you able to get in touch with the authorities to get on the flight then?
Actually, ma'am, I'm working for the US military and NATO base. They already instructed for last 1 month ago that situation will happen. So to be prepared.
Okay, Mr. Yogesh Kumar, are we going to try and fix that audio line with you because your audio is a little unclear. There is some amount of echo which is happening, so I'm not able to understand what you're saying. So give my team some time. We're going to try and patch that audio line again with you. I also want to bring in some more stories that we have from Afghanistan and those who've managed to reach here. We spoke to so many of them who told us how it was a nightmare just to get to the Kabul airport. The crowd outside the airport itself was so big and such a chaos. Many of them actually saw the firing take place, heard the firing take place, and they're literally glad they've somehow managed to cheat death and to come back to India. Of course, there are many who still fear for the people who are still back. We spoke to also many from Afghanistan who belong to that country and have now been evacuated. In fact, let me first bring you a conversation that we had with one of the Indians who's been brought back, Tamal Bhattacharya.
I cheated the death. I escaped the death. So did other Indians who came with us. Right. So I just felt too blessed to be here. Honestly. We were in a situation which was pretty dicey, and there was a moment when all of us thought, 200 plus Indians, that it would be extremely difficult for all of us to get back to India as soon as possible. Maybe when the commercial flights start or resume, we can have our tickets, but we were in complete darkness about when the commercial flights would basically resume. Given the fact that the Americans are still continuing with the evacuation process, and we don't know after they leave Afghanistan what's in store for Afghanistan.
The fall of Afghanistan and the takeover by Taliban, it literally happened in front of all of you.
In front of my eyes, yes.
In front of your eyes. What is that one thing that you can possibly never forget in your life?
And I was basically, I was frozen to death, in a nutshell, I can say. Not only me,
How many
so
Indians
happened
were
to all the Indians.
How many of them were there with you?
At that moment, I was only with 3 Indians, and when we were basically instructed by the MEA, Minister of External Affairs, to gather at a place, which was basically a wedding hall named Khalid Wedding Hall at Sharekari area, Kabul. There I saw basically 200 plus Indians. It was absolutely nice. There was no problem. And they didn't harm us, they didn't touch us. They basically guarded us, they defended us, they helped us.
As a teacher, are you worried about the future of all those girl students who were there?
I am definitely. I am worried about the future of these women. Why? Because I know that in a society, if women don't prosper, the society as a whole cannot prosper.
Can you
prosperous.
trust Taliban?
No, of course not, because we don't know. And by the way, we have some kind of, quintessential examples of their torture to the people, which they did back in 1990s. So it's very hard for me to believe them and digest their stories.
Narendra Singh Khalsa, a lawmaker from Afghanistan, was one of the many others who got evacuated from Kabul and brought to India. An Afghan national and a member of parliament, Mr. Khalsa, broke down once he got safely back to India, while he conveyed that it was painful to leave his country and emphasized on how the situation in Afghanistan was so grim. He also expressed, of course, his gratitude to the Indian government.
तालिबान तो हमेशा में कहते हैं तुम अफगान हो, अफगानिस्तान में रहो, आपकी सब कुछ सुरक्षित हमारी जिम्मेवारी है, मगर हम आप देख रहे हो कि उस तालिबानों भी एक गुरोह नहीं है, 1000 किस्म तालिबान हैं, किस से बात करें, किस से ढूंढें, तब तक हालात ना बने हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं। उसलिए हम कोशिश की क्योंकि अफगानिस्तान की हालात अब सीरियस है, हम जाएं अफगानिस्तान से, कोई जेड़े मुल्क में भी हो, हमारे बच्चे फैमिली, और हम उधर MP थे, हमारे घर में आए थे, हमारे गांस, कागजात, कंप्यूटर, गाड़ी, सब कुछ लेके गए।
आप मेंबर ऑफ पार्लियामेंट रहे नरेंद्र खालसा, आप तो एक MP के तौर पर अपने मुल्क को छोड़ना कितने दर्द की बात लगती है?
ये तो मुझे रोना आता है।
सर आप जाएंगे अपने घर, आप चिंता मत करिए, आप जाएंगे, ऐसा आप रोइए मत सर।
सर अफगानिस्तान के लिए कोई दुआ इस समय अगर आप कहना चाहें तो क्या कहेंगे अफगानिस्तान के लिए?
Imagine what would have been going on in his mind. Imagine his plight and his family's plight. Forever lost everything that he's ever had. His entire life, the memories built, everything gone, with absolutely no hope right now of going back to his homeland. That is what is happening to thousands of people in Afghanistan right now. Popular Afghan pop star Aryana Saeed, another of those lucky ones who managed to get out of the country after the Taliban takeover, known as the face of liberal democratic Afghanistan that gave women equal rights. The singer speaks on how difficult it was for her to leave the country, especially because she is a known face. Now, while recalling how she was targeted by the Taliban earlier, Aryana Saeed says she doesn't believe that the Taliban will uphold women's rights.
About the flight, and what are the challenges you faced?
Akash, it was a very hard, very challenging, very difficult to get to the airport, to the American military base, especially for me, because I am a famous person in Afghanistan and my face is recognized by anyone and everyone. And it was very challenging for me to go through the Taliban checkpoints to get to the airport. This was on the 16th of August that I decided to get out of Afghanistan. Even though my flight was initially on the 15th, but unfortunately, Taliban took over the capital city, Kabul, and all the flights were cancelled and the airport was filled with thousands of people and the plane couldn't take off. So literally on the 16th, we took a risk to go back to the airport and fortunately, we made it to the American base.
But the Taliban is saying that they will respect the women's rights according to the Sharia law. But we are seeing also that they have been stopped from working, going to the workplace, stopped from the education. So what do you have to say about that?
Akash, I know that they've been saying that, but I personally believe and am definitely sure that they're only saying that because right now they want to be recognized by the international community. They want to be recognized by the world. So they're portraying a face that is not real. I do not trust them, and I do not think that they are going to be like normal human beings and that they're going to give the full rights of the humans in Afghanistan, especially the women. I mean, they are saying Sharia law, but they're not making it specific. Which type of a Sharia law are they talking about? Which circle are they talking about? That's not clear yet, and that's the biggest concern that we have.
In fact, like we've been telling you, the situation at the airport itself has been horrific. Let's listen into some of the others who were evacuated by the Indian team from Afghanistan.
Stranded in Afghanistan once again has begun, and more than 3 flights today have come. That includes one of the C-17 Globemaster. This is Indian International Airport of Delhi, and this is the Indira Gandhi Airport where these people have been evacuated from Afghanistan. Right now, I'm also having 2 people who are working in Afghanistan airport. Sir, किस तरीके से हालात वहाँ बिगड़े, आप लोग क्या कर रहे थे और क्या देखा आप लोगों ने काबुल एयरपोर्ट पे?
काबुल एयरपोर्ट में सिचुएशन नॉर्मल था, लेकिन सडनली इन लोग उधर अंदर आए बोल के उन लोग का उस तरफ सिविलियन एयरपोर्ट के अंदर तालिबान लोग आए बोल के उधर से आदमी लोग पूरा भाग के इस तरफ आया था उस टाइम, क्योंकि फ्लाइट भी उतना ज़्यादा नहीं था। उस टाइम थोड़ा हालत बिगड़ गया था।
सर, जिस समय आप लोग वहाँ फंसे हुए थे, फैमिली से बात हो रही थी, क्या कह रही थी आप लोगों की फैमिली? थोड़ा चिंता हो रही थी कि कैसे यहाँ से बाहर निकलेंगे?
सर, फैमिली को बोलेगा तो हमारे को काम ज़रूर चाहिए, बोलेगा तो हमारे को फैमिली का मैं दिन भर फ़ोन करके बोलता था, इधर सिक्योरिटी रीज़न हमारे को फुल टाइट है, कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है। हमारे को उतना कॉन्फिडेंस वो लोग दिया था, उधर मेरेन्स था, US मेरेन्स था, वो लोग कॉन्फिडेंस देता था तुम्हारे को कुछ टच नहीं करने का, कुछ आदमी इधर नहीं आएगा, तुम्हारे को फुल सिक्योरिटी हम लोग देगा बोल के हमारे को पूरा सिक्योरिटी में उधर काम।
लेकिन फिर यहाँ फैमिली से क्या बात होती थी, क्या बोलते थे वो लोग? क्या किस तरीके से निकलना मुश्किल लग रहा था या आसान था, क्या था?
नहीं, थोड़ा लास्ट का सिचुएशन में थोड़ा मुश्किल लग गया आने का टाइम। बाद में सिविलियन एयरपोर्ट पूरा क्लोज हो गया, इसके लिए आने के लिए थोड़ा तकलीफ हो गया तो भी फर्स्ट उधर से लिफ्ट कर दिया, इंडियन आर्मी का C-17 फ्लाइट लिफ्ट कर दिया। इसके लिए इंडियन आर्मी से मैं पूरा वो लोग का धन्यवाद देने के लिए मैं कोशिश
निकलते वक्त क्योंकि एयरपोर्ट में बहुत भीड़ था, क्योंकि इन लोग को US आर्मी वाला एयरलिफ्ट कर रहा था, इसलिए बहुत आदमी लोग था। क्योंकि हालत उतना अच्छा नहीं था, क्योंकि सिविलियन एयरपोर्ट टोटली क्लोज था, सिर्फ ये बेस में का C-17 आता था, आर्मी फ्लाइट छोड़ के दूसरा कौन सा भी फ्लाइट नहीं आया था। अपना भी 3 C-17 आया था, वो C-17 मैं ही बस चला के पैसेंजर छोड़ा था, क्योंकि मैं उधर ही बस चलाने वाला था। मेरे साथ दूसरा भी था आदमी, मेरा बंदा, हम लोग ऐसे काम कर रहा था।
आपने सर बताया कि आप आर्मी को थैंक यू कहना चाहेंगे, लेकिन जब आप लोग बैठे थे फ्लाइट में, जब फ्लाइट उड़ने वाली थी, उस समय क्या इमोशंस थे वहाँ फ्लाइट के अंदर, अगर वो बता पाएँ आप तो?
फ्लाइट का अंदर बोलेगा तो हमारा घर में भी बहुत टेंशन में, हम लोग इतना बार जल्दी घर पहुँचेगा तो हमारे को अच्छा हमारा थिंकिंग था, इसके लिए हम लोग उधर से इधर आया।
बाहर का सिचुएशन हम लोग को मालूम नहीं, एयरबेस का अंदर अपना कोई भी बंदा लोग नहीं है। और मेनली कतर के कतर का ये अपना इंडिया एम्बेसी को बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया बोलने के धन्यवाद बोले, क्योंकि बहुत मदद किया उन लोग।
Let's go across to Yogesh Kumar, one of those evacuated from Afghanistan, came back to India on 17th of August, the first flight that brought Indians back from there. Yogesh Kumar, thank you for speaking with us. मेरी अंडरस्टैंडिंग है कि आप 2012 से वहां पे काम कर रहे थे, इज दैट ट्रू?
यस मैम।
तो ये जब पहले सिचुएशन खराब होनी शुरू हुई, तब क्या आपका थॉट प्रोसेस था कि वहीं रहेंगे या वापस आएंगे, और क्या आप वहां पे प्राइवेट कंपनी के साथ काम कर रहे थे या किसी गवर्नमेंट एंटिटी के साथ?
एक्चुअली मैम देश UK बेस्ड कंपनी थी, लेकिन हम लोगों को क्या आश्वस्त किया गया था कि आपको घबराने की कुछ आवश्यकता नहीं है, आपको सेफली इवैक्यूएट किया जाएगा। लेकिन सिचुएशन हालात बहुत बिगड़ने लग गए थे बाहर की साइड में। हम लोग क्या कि बेस में काम करते थे, तो हमारे कोई दिक्कत नहीं थी, लेकिन क्या है कि बाहर की जो सुविधा थी वो सब बिगड़ने लग गई थी। तालिबान सब काबुल की तरफ बढ़ रहे थे, तो हालात बिगड़ते जा रहे थे टाइम पर। इधर से घरवाले भी सब चिंतित होते थे, सब पूछते थे कि ठीक है कब आ रहे हो करके।
तो किस तरीके से आपका वापस आना फैसिलिटेट हुआ? बिकॉज आप 17 तारीख को जब आए, उस समय तो काबुल एयरपोर्ट पे बहुत भीड़ भड़का, बहुत कंफ्यूजन, कैओस, फायरिंग तक चल रही थी।
जी मैडम, देखो फायरिंग तो ऐसी हो रही थी कि सिविल पब्लिक बहुत अंदर आने की कोशिश कर रही। वहां की इतनी पब्लिक आउट ऑफ कंट्रोल हो गई थी कि वो सब लोग रनवे के ऊपर आ गए थे। इवन आपने देखा होगा कि पब्लिक ने जो आर्मी का प्लेन होता है C-17, उसके ऊपर चढ़ने की कोशिश कर गई, लोग बाग चढ़ गए उसके ऊपर। उनको ये नहीं पता कि वो गिर जाएंगे तो मौत से खेल रहे, लेकिन किसी को सबको वही डर था कि एज सुन एज पॉसिबल वी लीव द कैपिटल ऑफ अफगानिस्तान काबुल, इफ वी लीव वी आर सेफ।
उस समय एयरपोर्ट में कोऑर्डिनेशन कैसे हो रहा था ये योगेश जी, क्योंकि इतने हजारों लोग कैसे अपनी इंडियन अथॉरिटीज को ढूंढना है, कहाँ जाना है, क्या कहाँ रहना है, खाना पीना, वो किस तरीके से ऑर्गेनाइज किया जा रहा था?
मैडम खाने पीने की तो सबको होश उड़े हुए थे कि जितने जल्दी हम लोग काबुल छोड़ेंगे उतना बढ़िया है। उस समय खाने पीने की तो किसी को केयर ही नहीं थी, सब एयरपोर्ट पे आ गए थे कि जितना जल्दी निकले यहाँ से उतना सेफ रहेंगे। और कोऑर्डिनेशन में इंडियन गवर्नमेंट, इंडियन एम्बेसी से हम लोगों ने ऑलरेडी रजिस्टर किया हुआ था, हमारा बिल्कुल उनसे लिंक चल रहा था।
डायरेक्ट आपका लिंक इंडियन एम्बेसी से हो गया था, वहां के जो ऑफिशियल्स हैं ग्राउंड पे जो इवैक्यूएशन कोऑर्डिनेट कर रहे हैं?
जी मैम, एक्चुअली में इंडियन एम्बेसी तो वहां वो कोऑर्डिनेशन कर रहे थे, लेकिन उनका कोई भी ग्राउंड स्टाफ उस समय नहीं पहुंच पाया था। उससे पहले हम लोग क्या कि यूएस मिलिट्री के द्वारा इवैक्यूएट करके हम लोगों को कतर मूव कर दिया गया था।
जी जी। और जिस समय आप लोग एयरपोर्ट से हाँ बोलिए।
जब एयरपोर्ट में इतने हालात बिगड़ गए तो मतलब ये था कि यूएस मेरिन्स को भी 8 घंटे 10-12 घंटे के लिए कम से कम उन लोगों को भी अपना ऑपरेशन रोकना पड़ा, क्योंकि आम पब्लिक भागने के लिए सब एयरपोर्ट में रनवे के ऊपर तक आ गए थे।
हाँ,
मंजर बहुत भयावह हो गया था वो।
जी, हमने कुछ वैसे विजुअल्स देखे और हमें तो यहाँ बैठ के टीवी पे देखने से ही ऐसा लग रहा है कि कैसे ऐसी सिचुएशन हो सकती थी, पर आप थे उस समय वहां जब ये चल रहा था?
जी मैम, हाँ हम लोग वही थे। एक्चुअली हम लोग तो क्या बेस में काम करते हैं, इसलिए हम लोग को उतना टेंशन नहीं, लेकिन बाकी पूरा लाइव देख रहे थे हम लोग कि ये क्या सिचुएशन होगी, इतना एक साथ आउट ऑफ कंट्रोल काम हो गया। लेकिन फिर भी यूएस गवर्नमेंट ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया इवैक्यूएट करने के लिए, उन लोगों ने बहुत कोशिश किया और यूएस मिलिट्री ने पूरा सपोर्ट करके हम लोग को इवैक्यूएशन प्लान करके पूरा रेडी किया, वहां से इवैक्यूएट किया हम लोगों को फिर।
योगेश, वापस आने के बाद आपकी जब आप वहां कतार पहुंच गए उसके बाद आगे कैसे इवैक्यूएशन होगा, वो कैसे कोऑर्डिनेट किया गया?
वो सब कोऑर्डिनेशन में एक्चुअली हम लोगों ने कांटेक्ट किया जो इंडियन एम्बेसी इन कतार है। कैन यू हियर मी मैम?
यस, आई कैन हियर यू, गो अहेड प्लीज।
ओके, वो हम लोगों ने क्या कि कतार में जो इंडियन एम्बेसी है उन लोगों से कॉन्सुलेट में कांटेक्ट किया, उन लोगों ने बहुत सपोर्ट किया हम लोग को। वो लोग बोल रहे हैं हम कांटेक्ट कर रहे हैं, एज सुन एज पॉसिबल जैसे ही प्लान हो जाएगा हम लोग को आपको उठा लेंगे यहाँ से।
We are very glad,
तो
Yogesh Kumar, that you are back safely along with many others and hope कि और भी बाकी इंडियंस जो वहाँ पे है safe and sound
yes ma'am, thank you ma'am,
वापस आ जाए। थैंक यू योगेश कुमार जी हमसे बात करने के लिए।
थैंक यू मैडम, थैंक यू।